Hi, everyone. Welcome. So, today we are going to be going straight into all the new immigration updates. There's been so much that happened in August and even the first few days of this month that I don't even want to waste any time. If you are new here, I am Lillian Chukwu. I'm a U.S. immigration attorney, and I help my clients get green cards and citizenship for themselves and their families using the U.S. immigration law system. So let's jump right in. If you are joining me live, please feel free to ask me questions. And if you're watching this on the replay, also feel free to ask questions as well, because I have my iPad right here with all the updates. So let's get right into it. First thing, USCIS agents. So now USCIS, as you know, is the agency that handles green card applications, citizenship applications. Basically, if you want to get status in the US and it is something you are applying for, it's typically going through USCIS at some point. So USCIS is the adjudication part of the US immigration system. Well, as of yesterday, oh, someone says they cannot hear me. I am so sorry for that. Thank you. I like when people tell me these things so that I can actually fix it. How is that? Please let me know if you can hear me. I will try to speak up more. I did have a mic, but it seems to not be working. So I hope you can hear me better now. Please let me know. Okay. So USCIS officers are now going to have some of the officers be special agents. What does this mean? It means that these officers are now going to be authorized to make arrests at USCIS, carry firearms, execute search warrants and arrest warrants, and other power standards for law enforcement. This rule allows USCIS to implement Homeland Security delegation of certain law enforcement authorities to the agency. So basically, USCIS is now going to go from just an adjudication arm of US immigration to now some of the agents being special agents and now basically doing the same job as ICE, but under USCIS because the head of the Homeland Security gave them that power, gave them that authority. So that is the new, that came out yesterday. Okay. When I say news and updates, news and updates, that literally came out yesterday. We don't know what that will look like, which agents will be given this special authority. We just don't know. Okay. We will hopefully find out how this is going to work moving forward. But that is update of yesterday is that now it is a rule. They're going to have special agents that will be making these arrests, carrying firearm, executing search warrants, arrest warrants. And it's important to note that these agents not only are targeting people applying for benefits, so non-US citizens, but also it sneakily in here that it will also be looking at arresting attorneys. So we will see again how all of these are implemented. Next update is about the false claim of citizenship. As you all know, and I preach this all the time, if you are not a US citizen, please do not do anything. Do not say that you're a US citizen. Do not put on any applications that you are a US citizen because there is a very limited exceptions to that false claim of US citizenship. So if you say you're a US citizen when you are not a US citizen and it comes up on your immigration applications, you can be in a situation where you are not going to be able to get that green card because of that false claim. Okay, so really, really important. Let's talk about the exceptions because sometimes we talk about all the craziness, but when it comes to false claim of citizenship, there are exceptions. There are things you can take, you can do to determine if that is going to affect you moving forward. So the first one is if the person actually made a false claim of citizenship, right? Because sometimes you may think you're not a US citizen, but you actually are a US citizen. So the first thing we need to make sure is that you actually made a false claim of US citizenship. Next thing after that is, did you make that false claim of citizenship on or after September 30th, 1996? That's the key date. Okay, that is the key date. If you made the false claim before that date, September 30th, 1996, it will not come back and hunt you for your green card. However, if you made a false claim of citizenship after September 30th, 1996, it's a problem, all right? Third thing, whether the alien's false claim of citizenship was for any purpose or benefit under immigration laws or under any other federal and state laws. So if you like were talking to a friend and you're like, yeah, I'm a US citizen, and that's where it ends, you didn't file anything with US immigration, you didn't file anything of benefit, it's just you talking to a friend, that's not going to be considered a false claim of citizenship. You have to have done it for the purpose to get a benefit under federal or state laws. Really important. And then we will look at whether the person timely retracted their claim of citizenship, right? So if you are claiming to be a US citizen and you're not, but you timely retracted that statement, you may still be okay, but you need to prove that you timely retracted the false claim of citizenship. Super important. And then finally, we need to see if the person has any statutory exceptions depending on what they are applying for, okay? So depending on if you are applying for special immigrant juvenile status, it actually has a provision that says that whether you have a false claim in the past, because you're applying under this specific thing, that false claim is automatically waived. It is not a problem. But we need to know what are you applying for, and is that going to be a problem? So that is their new policy memo. It came out it came out on the 3rd. So they updated the manual on August 20th with this policy. So don't make any false claims of citizenship. If you are not a US citizen, do not say you are a US citizen on any formal applications. Whether you're applying for a job, remember when you're applying for a job, they typically do an I-9, and if you select US citizen, you now have a false claim of citizenship because that is in violation of federal law, and you are getting a benefit by saying you're a US citizen in that situation. So you would tick off all the boxes for having a false claim of citizenship. So really, really pay attention to that. And if you do have a false claim of citizenship or you are worried about that, please talk to an immigration lawyer. Do not file anything. Do not do anything until you know if there's an exception that would apply to you and if you still have time to do a timely retraction. Once USCIS brings it to your attention, there's no timely retraction, right? Once you go to your interview and it comes a thing, there's no timely retraction. Typically, once you get the benefit, it may, they may still not consider that a timely retraction, but you want to know all of that before you file anything. Next thing, electronic payments only. USCIS is getting all digital on us, and they will no longer take paper checks or money orders. So if you want to make a payment, and this starts on October 28th, so starting October 28th, if you are filing any application with USCIS, you need to make sure that you are either sending it in with their ACH authorization form or the credit card authorization form, okay? They have a specific form for one of those. If you want to pay with your bank account, do the ACH, right? If you want to pay with a debit or credit card, do the card authorization. If you do not have a debit or credit card, and you also do not have a bank account that you want to use for this purpose, they are allowing you to use a prepaid card, okay? So you can put that Visa, you can put that on a prepaid card and use that prepaid card in order to actually file. So make sure that you are aware of that. So starting October 28th, no more paper checks, no more money orders. You must use an ACH authorization form or a debit/credit card authorization form. That debit or credit card can be a prepaid card, but just know that's the requirement. Okay. So I am going to pause here and answer a couple questions that I see, and then we still have more updates, but I'm going to answer your questions. Hi, Sakali. I hope I'm saying your name right. How long does it take for USCIS to make a decision on the case after receiving the request for evidence? It depends on the stage that the case is on. So let's say, for example, you filed your case and you forgot to include like a birth certificate, right? And they send you a request for evidence immediately asking for that document. You're still going to have to go through the normal processing time. If it's like a year into the application process, they send a request for evidence, and they're getting ready to make decisions, it's going to be typically within 90 days of getting that request for evidence. They would then make moves to schedule interviews if necessary, depending on the type of application. That's what it really comes down to. It depends on the type of application and at what point in the process you actually got that request for evidence, okay? I have had cases where we received a request for evidence asking for a specific type of document. So we send in a birth certificate, but the birth certificate that's issued in the country has like multiple types, and they wanted a specific type. Once we sent that in, they were able to, like, within a few days, approve the I-130 and move on with the application, okay? So it really just depends. And then we've had cases where we send it in, they have the same issue, we send in the birth certificate, and then it's like, okay, wait for the processing time. Just wait for the processing time. So it really depends on the type of application and the stage. Next question, is it safe to travel with my green card? So right now, green card holders can travel outside of the US. That is one of the benefits of having your permanent residency. Now, after I say that, I'm going to give you a few caveats, right? Just because you can travel doesn't mean you should. If you have any arrests, if you have any public facing like criticism of the US government, of Israel, of certain people, you may want to, just think about whether that trip is worth it or not. Okay. But if you have a clean criminal record and clean immigration history, that's also a part of it, okay? Then travel outside of the US is still allowed. Again, the amount of time you can spend outside of the US should be limited. People typically say you can spend up to 6 months before it becomes an issue. I say you may not want to do that, okay? You may not want to do that. You may want to keep it as close to like a month or less of travel, all right? Okay, so those are all the questions I got. If you have questions and you're joining me live, put them in the comments. If you are watching this on a replay, put your questions in the comments. I go back and respond to your questions, okay? All right, next thing, immigrant visa interviews. So typically when you are applying for An immigrant visa, meaning maybe a family member in the US, your spouse is a US citizen, file an application for you. You go to you will have an interview outside of the US at an embassy. And USCIS, US government, is basically saying your visa interview will only be scheduled in the country that you reside in or your country of citizenship if you request the country of citizenship. That means you cannot just say, hey, I want my application to be moved to another embassy because that country is faster. They're saying, no, no, no. Okay. There are certain places, right, that you must be interviewed. So your country of residence or your country of citizenship, unless the embassy in your country of residence or country of citizenship are closed. And that is an issue a lot of people will have eventually with some of these closures, is that when that happens, you're going to be in a position where you may not be able to go to that specific embassy. But the embassy thought about that, right? They thought about it, and part of their basically practice alert to people and part of what they have been letting us know is that depending on the embassy, they may have the designated post. So for example, Haiti does not have an embassy that's open. A US embassy is not open in Haiti, but they are designated to go to Nassau for their interviews. So someone from Haiti cannot just request to have their interview in, Canada, for example, unless they are a resident of Canada. Okay. So either you're a resident of that country, you are a citizen of that country, or there's a designated post. So basically, the designated post takes the place of your country of citizenship. Okay, so if you live in Haiti, you're a citizen of Haiti, but there's no embassy open, guess what? There's a designated post. So for example, Afghanistan, Islamabad. Okay, Belarus, Warsaw. All right. So Sudan, Cairo. That's the only place they can get their interview, right? Even if you live in the Sudan, you still need to go to Cairo. If you live in Sudan and you are a resident of another country, you can get your interview in that other country. So it's so important to know these things, because we were able before to just request, hey, can this have an interview in your country since their embassy is closed? And sometimes the embassies will be like, sure, we can make that happen for you. That's no longer the case. Go to a designated post, your country of residence or your country of citizenship for your immigrant interviews, immigrant visa interviews. Okay. All right. So next thing, we have a proposed rule. This is not a rule yet. There's still time to comment, but this goes more to people that have an F, J, or I visas. If you have one of those and you want to, typically those have a duration of stay as the time period you can be in the US. So there's no like end date for typically when they issue an F1 visa, there's no end date for when you can be in the US. So the proposed rule is going to change that, right? They want to change that to have an actual period of admission. So if you apply for an F1 visa and you say you are going for your master's and the master's program is 2 years, they may just make your duration of stay, right, your period of admission, instead of making a duration of stay, meaning however long you pursue a degree, they may not make it that 2 years that you're supposed to do your master's. This is going to affect some people, right? Because if your period of stay is only for that time frame, you may want to do OPT afterwards. You may want to work afterwards. That is authorized by the U.S. government. That just means now you have to do an extension of stay. So if you come to the US for a bachelor's degree and then you're like, you know what, I want to get my master's as well. In order for you to then get that master's, you need to extend your stay and basically go through a whole application. If this rulemaking goes into effect, anyone on an F, J, or I visa will have a fixed period of admission into the US. And if you want to go beyond that period of admission, you would now need to file an extension of stay. You can't just get a new I-20 and continue going to school in the US. Okay. This is going to affect, like I said, a lot of my F1 students out there that are hoping to eventually get into an H1B and all of that. You need to pay attention to this rule. You need to make sure you comment, okay? The comment section, the comment period ends September 28th. I always talk about making sure when there is a rulemaking or proposed rulemaking that we are making comments, we're letting the government know what we think of the rule. So September 28th is when that comment period will be over, and then the government will most likely make that rule permanent. All right. All right. Next thing, personal investigations for, let's be clear, personal investigations for naturalization. So when you apply for naturalization to get your U.S. citizenship from having a green card, U.S. government basically looks at your background, make sure you don't have, criminal history, immigration issues, and that's really it, right? They're not going to your life and, asking people if they know you or what they think about you. Well, USCIS is going to resume personal investigations of naturalization applicants. What does this actually mean? So these personal investigations cover the vicinity of the person's place of residence, employment, and includes at least 5 years, at least a 5-year period before applying for naturalization. That means if they want to, ask your neighbors about you, if they want to ask your job about you, if they want to do any of those things, they can. They now are told that they have to. This is going to delay naturalization so much. But basically, they're saying that the purpose of this is to corroborate an applicant's eligibility for naturalization, right? So they want to includes like scrutiny of their residence, making sure you actually live where you say you're living, right? That you have good moral character, your attachment to the U.S. Constitution, and your disposition to the good order and happiness of the United States. You heard that right, right? These personal investigations will not only look at your residency, they will look at your good moral character, which we all used to. They will look at your attachment to the US Constitution. What does that actually mean? And then finally, the one that really, who's going to define this for us is the disposition to the good order and happiness of the United States. Okay, now, so we'll see how this, is applied. I will say this was issued on August 22nd, 2025. And I just had a naturalization interview this week, and they did not do this, right? This was not part of the process. So that it seems like it's not really every single applicant that they're going to go through this whole thing with, okay? But I just want to let you know that is now a new thing, and they will do this for some applicants. I don't see them doing this for every single applicant. It's just too much. It's just too much to actually do this. But I'll keep you updated once if I see them actually applying this. I will let you know how they're applying it and all of that. All right. So next thing is that is now a new policy alert. They issued this one. When I tell you, they have been issuing policy alerts so much. This was on August 21st. So this policy alert updates the factors that officers have to look at when exercising discretion. So there are certain applications that when you file, one of the things that officers have to tick off is that they are willing to exercise discretion, that they are looking at the whole picture and they have made the decision that even though you meet the requirements, technically, we don't think you should get this visa. We don't think you should get this green card. We don't think you should get this status, whatever that is. So this policy is basically saying these are the factors that officers have to look at when they are making this decision. So let's look at some of the policy highlights. It affirms that USCIS considers factors including circumstances where an alien has endorsed, promoted, supported, or otherwise espoused the views of an anti-American or terrorist organization or group, including those who support or promote anti-Semitic terrorism, anti-Semitic terrorist organization, and anti-Semitic ideologies, to be an overwhelmingly negative factor in USCIS discretionary analysis. Okay, so the first thing. Next, it clarifies that when conducting a discretionary analysis, officers consider whether an alien's application for admission or parole was made in accordance with all applicable laws, regulations, and policies in effect at the time. So if you came into the US with parole, or you were admitted to the US, so you may have come in with a visa, they're saying, was this in line with all the applicable laws and regulations and policies in effect at that time? Should you have gotten admission? Should you have gotten the parole? That's what they're saying here, that the officer needs to consider when they are making these discretionary analysis. Next, it explains that an exercise of discretion is the adjudication. It explains that exercise of discretion in the adjudication of an employment-based immigration petition is limited to cases where the alien is seeking a national interest waiver. I love this because they make it so clear what they care about. So if you are applying for a green card through the employment-based immigration and you are basically saying, I don't need an employer to apply for this, right? I'm not like someone that has like extraordinary ability. I'm not, the top of my field. They're saying if you want to apply for that national interest waiver, that is the only employment-based green card that they're going to look at discretion for. So that's the only one this applies to. When I tell you. And then clarifies that USCIS exercises discretion when adjudicating requests for extension of stay, change of status, reinstatement of F or M, non-immigrant status, and in certain employment authorization requests. So if you want to extend your stay, change your status, reinstate your F or M status, there is going to be that exercise of discretion. What we are talking about here is if you are going to be applying for any of these things, you may want to look at including documentation that shows the positive of you, right? To show that you do qualify for them to give you positive exercise of discretion instead of negative exercise of discretion, okay? So now with these applications, you may have to do more than just apply, right? You may have to do more than just meet the basic requirements. You may have to now do more in order to actually get that, extension of stay or change of status or any of that, including employment authorization requests. So they can exercise discretion in certain employment authorization requests, which means they can deny it even if you qualify. All right. So why all of this is important, right? I try to like what you can do. All of this is important because you want to make sure that before you apply for anything, you know what the current policy is so that you can actually make sure you're within that, right? You're making sure that you're including a lot of evidence of good moral character with your citizenship application, because now your citizenship application is going to take good moral character into even more, like there's going to be more that is required there. So you really want to make sure that you're looking at good moral character for your citizenship application, that any application that requires discretion or gives the officer discretion, meaning they can deny it even if you meet the requirements, right? This that they see that's negative, they can choose to deny your application still. In those situations, you want to make sure that you are including evidence of good moral character. So for citizenship, for example, it's not just I never committed any crimes, but you may want to include something that says like, I go to church every Sunday, right? I am involved in my community. I volunteer at this, community space. Whatever that is, you may want to talk about it on the front end, because when it comes to the time for the interview, when it comes time to actually like have that officer look at your full picture and see if they should exercise discretion. If you do meet the requirements for good moral character, you want them to be able to say, yes, this person meets the requirements, this person, look at all this evidence. All right. So you really want to just prepare for it. Do not be scared. One thing I tell people is I am not scared of these policy changes because they have to tell us what these are and then we can prepare for it. It's one thing if they never tell us that they're putting like a whole lot more emphasis into the good moral character standard. And then you get to your interview and that's all they focus on. They're asking you things that you didn't even know was required. But because we know these things, because they have to tell us these things, we can be prepared and we can make sure that we cover all our bases before we even file. That's the important thing. All right. So if you have questions, please be sure to put them in the comments. I am always happy to respond to your questions. There's so much going on. There's so many new things happening that I want to make sure that I'm getting you the information that you need. I am answering your questions and that you feel supported throughout this whole process. Like there's so much going on that I want to make sure you have the information that you actually need. So ask me questions. If you're watching on replay, please do ask me questions. And Rafa, good to see you. Hi, thank you for joining. And please, if you have questions, put them in the comments. If you watch replay, ask me questions. And if you would like to work with me or see if we can work together, you can do that by going to my website, lilylegal.com, click on contact us, and you can pick a date and time that works best for you for us to chat. The way we have our appointment set up right now, you can literally see my calendar on the website and then be able to select when you are available based on when I'm available, so that we're not playing phone tag and trying to figure out when is the best time, okay? So feel free to do that if you need to. If you found this video helpful, if getting these updates and knowing what is going on in U.S. immigration is important to you, please feel free to like this video, share this video, because the more people know what's going on, the better. The better the community is. So please feel free to share, like, subscribe if you are in a place where you can do that. And thank you so much. I will see you guys next week. We will probably do a Q&A with some updates. I feel like every week now, there's so much going on that I have to, like, whatever else we're doing, there's going to be some updates because there's too much. There's too much to cover just once a month. So we'll probably do some updates throughout the month. Okay. So thank you all so much for joining me. I will see you next time. And then remember, we do have videos that come out on Tuesday, so make sure you watch that. We have a whole video on the good moral character requirement. It's already up on the channel, so please feel free to go and watch that. Thank you so much, and I will see you next week. Bye.